Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the session this afternoon. It is a true story. I did meet my husband in a homeless shelter. We were both in the shelter. We were fortunate enough to not be living there, though. We were working there at the time. And I'll talk to you about my path a little bit when we get further into the presentation. But I was working in administration, and he was working in direct client services. He was a bilingual case manager and drug and alcohol counselor, and I did grant writing to the tune of about $10 million a year for, at the time, it was one of the largest homeless services agencies in the nation. So we met each other there, and we fell in love. And 6 years later, we secretly got married. We didn't actually plan to get married. We sort of didn't do it on purpose. But we were sitting around one day, and you know how when you get further along in a relationship and you say, oh, I don't know, what do you think about getting married? And we're sitting around saying that, and we thought it was a great idea, and it just turned into, what are you doing after work tomorrow? And at the time, I lived in Las Vegas, so it's pretty easy to find an Elvis, right? So we went and got married, and the rest is history. So if I go out and have drinks with any of you, I'll tell you the story of how we actually switched over from homeless shelter working together to actually looking at each other cross-eyed and realizing we were interested. So that'll be a good story for some of you. But thank you so much for your interest and for coming here this afternoon. It's wonderful to be here today. This is my first time coming to the Women's Leadership Conference, and I am just having a tremendous time meeting so many wonderful women. My first couple of years in the area, I was unemployed, and I was fortunate enough to be unemployed by choice, but I had learned that I did not enjoy being unemployed. I did not sit home and eat bonbons and watch soaps all day, but what I was at home saying to myself was, gee, I want to be out in the workforce, but the economy here is very different than that of Los Angeles or New York City or some of the other places I had lived. And so I'm not a healthcare professional either, so so my choices were pretty slim, and I've had to reinvent myself many, many times. Every time I moved to a new city, a new job, all of it brought a lot of transition and reinvention on my part. And so that's given me a little bit of a platform to hopefully be able to share some of the things that I've learned that have worked for me and things that I've been able to share with others and I've seen work for them as well. And hopefully if any of you are in that influx right now, that it could work for you all as well. I'll draw your attention to something on this slide real quickly. There's a light bulb over this little person's head, this little gummy person. But this light bulb, we will come back to this, and this is something that is very, very important to me. This light bulb, it influences everything that I do, all the things that inspire me, the things that have been meaningful to me and for my life. This proverbial light bulb or the ideas influence so much of what I do. So I'll talk to you a little bit about what I do. As Donna told you, I'm the board secretary, and I also was recently appointed as the search coordinator for SOU's current, the 2016 presidential search. So I'm kind of doing two full-time jobs right now. And, living here for the past couple of years, I've had the pleasure of, because of the work I do on the board and the high level of administration in which I work with some pillars in the community and some of the smartest people that I've had the pleasure of meeting since moving here to the Rogue Valley, great professional minds. And one of the reasons that I'm here to talk with you today is that one of them was able to sort of recognize the journey that I've been through and asked me to come and share it with you. So my life has been a little unpredictable in that I've had to get up and relocate pretty frequently. Has anyone else had this experience? All right. Does anyone else enjoy this experience? Okay. Some people do not. Some people think that it is really nerve-wracking and anxiety-provoking, and it's probably both of those things at the same time for me. But I was born as someone who I didn't always know what I wanted to do with my life. My husband is a physician, and I've always sort of envied him a little bit because he knew from the time that he was probably 4 years old that he wanted to be a physician. And his mom tells me this story about how he's 4 years old and they're sitting in the car, and he says, Mom, I just don't get it, Mom. And she says, what? And he says, evolution. And she's like, this is at 4, okay. And so she says, well, why not? And he says, there's just too many monkeys. Like, to him, the reasoning was that if they all turned into human beings, why are there still so many left, But he has always known that, like, science and medicine were his path. And I remember being younger and even today, still not knowing what I want to do when I grow up, but having that feeling of, well, I can't just stay stagnant. I can't just stand here. I feel like I do have gifts, and I feel like I do have talent, and I feel like all of us do, right? And we've all learned some of those things about each other today. But it doesn't mean you just sit there like in your sort of internal locus saying, well, I'll just wait for opportunity to come along. But there are probably some ways you can go about finding what those things are that appeal to you. I'd love for this to be a little bit of an interactive session. I'll do a lot of talking, of course, but I think we're all pretty comfortable doing some of that talking as well. So for most of you, can we establish and just sort of agree, maybe by round of applause, that we're among friends, right? Okay. And since we're all among friends, can you all sort of turn to the person next to you, to your left or to your right, and talk to someone about what one of the toughest things in your career has been and what you did to overcome that or sort of get out of that jam? You guys are really excited. I love this. Wonderful. Donna has a mic back here. And one of the things I'm going to ask her to do is if a couple of you will share what it is that you just shared with one of your partners at the table. What were some of the barriers, or maybe one of the biggest barriers that you've had in your career, and how it is that you've overcame it? Anyone willing to share? All right. Donna is coming up to talk with Wendy.
Oh, I don't need a microphone, believe me.
Wonderful. That's great.
Probably my biggest obstacle was I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up.
Yeah.
Oh, can you identify?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, when you're 85 years old like me, you'll wake up, you're still trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up, and it comes to you, you're never going to grow up.
Yeah.
I've just accepted that's who I am.
Yeah.
I am always going to be a dabbler. This is good for a while. This is good for a while. This is good for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I do. I
Yeah.
dabble.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Anybody else? Got one person over here.
Probably don't need that.
Oh, great. Super. And what's your name? Can you say your name first?
My name is Stacy Ferrati,
Okay.
and I had a little of that too, and
Okay.
probably still do, but my career, I teach people how to speak, teach people how to do this.
Huh.
And the biggest obstacle for me is the internal stuff, the lack of belief in self, the fear, the who am I, the whatever, like our speaker this morning was saying. And I think the work is continual to get beyond that. I don't experience an external glass ceiling like someone may do in different careers. It's all internal for me, and it's just, oh, you can't do that? Well, what? Who said so? And so, where's that coming from? So that's really been what it is for me.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you both for sharing. Is there anyone else who would like to share that for the benefit of others? Oh, okay. We've got one more up here.
I don't need one.
Okay, Robin. Yeah.
I've been a serial entrepreneur most of my life and have owned and operated many businesses that I had to employ men, didn't have to, it just worked out that way. And there was always that conflict of, well, she's my boss. And, it was hard. But how I overcame that was to sell all those businesses.
Thank you, three ladies, so much for sharing that. So part of the purpose of that exercise is just to take a little bit of time so that we can learn a little bit more about each other and realize that there are people in this room who are just like you, who are probably feeling the same way that you feel and go through the same things professionally that you may go through. And as we sort of dive in today, we're going to do a few things. Starting out on common ground, right? We'll talk about our pathways and some of those barriers. And then where are we going? How are we going to get there? And then once you get there, now what? What happens after that? So is there anyone right now who, this is not the latest presentation up, but is there anyone right now who can talk to me about if they are in transition right now in this moment, or they are in the path of reinvention right now in this moment? We've got a few people. Okay. Are there any who are here today because, not because you're currently in it, but you foresee it's about to happen and you want to be prepared? Okay. Thank you for sharing that. The path is unclear, I think, for many reasons. I always say because of life challenges, yes, it does. And because of life changes, yes, life does change. But all of these things, hard skills, some of us maybe in the STEM field and don't feel like we have really good soft skills, the communication skills, right? Perhaps the writing skills. Or you may be like me, my major was English, and my graduate major was communications, and I've got a whole lot of soft skills, but I'll tell you what, don't give me a microscope, right? I don't want the hard skills. And some people just need more skills. Perhaps you're an early career professional, or you're early in a transition, but there are lots of reasons why. The biggest one, I think, on this slide is about being comfortable, right? When we are really comfortable in a place, I think that's the same thing as saying, I'm so comfortable, I don't want to take the leap to the next step because I'm scared. Right? And people say comfortable is good, it's being cozy, but what it really is if you're searching for that change, and if you're looking for that reinvention, and if you're looking for that transition, but you're comfortable right now, it also means that you're probably a little afraid to step outside of that comfort zone. But if you don't, you probably aren't going to get what it is that you're looking for. Some of the other things about the path being unclear, I won't go through the whole list, but has anyone in here ever worked a job where they were just miserable? Had a ball in the pit of their stomach every time they hit the parking lot, couldn't wait to go home, then you unload on your whole family about it, and then you do it again the next day? Ask me how I know. I've been there. But this happens to some of us, and then we feel stagnant because we don't know what to do next. We don't know how to go on from there. Maybe we're in a field, I know I've heard this mentioned, perhaps we think that there are too many women already and there isn't room for one more because we're in a male-dominated field. Or perhaps there aren't enough women, and so we say there's not going to be a place for me there. I'm too young. I'm too old. I'm too far ahead in my career. I feel really trapped. I feel like I'm in this job and I have to stay until this certain project is done or else it's ruin for me. But isn't it ruin if you stay, right? Maybe you don't see the options ahead of you. You don't see a way out, perhaps. These are, a whole bunch of these. I won't go through all of them, but there are so many different reasons why for us the path is unclear. The road ahead may be paved very well, but we don't know how to get there and how to take that next step. So I'm going to talk to you about my path a little bit, okay? True story. I was born in Pasadena, California, born and raised there. Thank you. Oh, I cannot wait to meet you women. Please give me your cards before you leave. So anyone who knows the beautiful city of Pasadena, that's where I'm from. And I went away to college all the way clear across the country. So normally we have timings on these, and so I would be able to show you the route. But I came over here to Hampton, Virginia, and I went to one of the HBCUs, Hampton University. And my freshman year in college, my mom had a stroke, and it was devastating. She was unable to use her hands anymore. She couldn't speak very well anymore, and she needed someone to take care of her. And I was only 17 years old at the time, and I had to move home to take care of her because that's what you do when you have family. And so sometimes a little monkey wrench gets thrown in the plans, and you have to figure out what's next. So then I made the loop back to Pasadena, and I said, okay, well, I'll just finish here. And I finished. I went to community college. Then I transferred to a 4-year, but it meant I had to go to 3 colleges to get 1 degree. And that was really a tough road, but I did it. And then after finishing, I worked in that homeless shelter, met my husband. Life was not happily ever after. From that point, I moved to Las Vegas, which is the really tiny jump next to the red one. And I went to grad school there, and I worked some jobs that I just loved. One is I went to grad school there. I worked as a teaching assistant, a part-time, like an adjunct instructor. I worked in recruitment, but all within the same division. And then I was assistant director for a research foundation that oversaw like major research contracts. Anyway, it was pretty random, but it was all of these transferable skills that I had been building, right? One of the things that I had learned how to do was communicate. right? That was my graduate major, something I really enjoyed. I enjoyed building relationships. And all things being equal, is there anyone in here who's responsible for hiring people? So all things being equal, let's say you have 2 candidates for a job. They both are really great candidates. They're both really smart. They both meet the qualifications. What's the thing that's going to set that person apart for you? That's something I hear a lot, communication skills. And so that's a transferable skill that, when you don't know what the next move is going to be, work on those communication skills, because most employers will say, especially if you're in STEM jobs or the soft jobs, right? It is, people need to know how to communicate with each other, how to not step on toes, how to compose an email. These are something that we think are basic skills, but people don't know these things. And if these are things that you can take the time to just spend a little time to learn it or teach it to yourself, go get a book. Get some opinions from the team that you've assembled. But nonetheless, that's what I did in Las Vegas. From that point, that's where the secret marriage happened also. And then we went on to St. Louis. So my husband was in residency. And, so all along the path, little things happen. In St. Louis, something remarkable happened to me. And I was dreading that move because at the time, is there anyone here from St. Louis? Oh, really? Okay. Kansas City, Kansas or Missouri?
Missouri.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. At the time, with all due respect, I thought moving to St. Louis was just going to be moving into an armpit.
I moved from California. I get that.
Yes. And it was a really tough move. And both culturally, the economy was very, very different. High manufacturing, financial industries, not a whole lot of the things that I had done in the past. And the part about it that was pretty interesting is also, this small arc from Vegas to St. Louis, that's a point in time where something else very devastating happened to me that changed my life. And my very best friend and sister died. And she died at 32 years old. And it was very unexpected. And that is something that set me back. And so again, when we talk about the path being unclear, I thought, how will I go on? I'm sure some of you have dealt with really devastating deaths, illnesses in your families, divorce, tough stuff with kids, but it doesn't mean that you have to stop in your own place and kind of cease to exist. And there are ways to sort of get past some of those things. So when I get to St. Louis, something remarkable happened there. I chose to be unemployed because I had to heal, right? And sometimes that's the choice that we have to make, is we have to take care of ourselves before we can move on to the next thing. And so I took some time off, but one of the things I learned is I have 2 sayings. Well, I have lots of sayings, but 2 of them are, one is it takes a job to get a job, right? Anyone in here ever notice that when you have a job, people offer you jobs left and right? And then when you're unemployed and you need a job, you can't buy one. You can't say, I'll pay you to hire me, right? You can't do it. It's a really tough thing to do. So I chose to do something that I thought was probably a big step down in my career at the time. And I went to a temp agency. I had been an assistant director at a place with a very high-profile job, but I was having a hard time breaking into this new economy. And so what I said was, at the very least, I won't be sitting home all day, and I am so depressed right now that I need to get out there, and I need to get dressed and put on some makeup every day and go somewhere and do something and be constructive and make contributions. And for me, that made a tremendous difference. So I start working for this temp agency, and then a company hired me that I went to work for. They hired me as a consultant. And what I thought was, at the very least as a temp, and this is something that I would encourage anyone to do because it's worked for me twice now. As the temp, it allowed me to circulate in the community, right? To get to know some of the businesses that I hear advertised on the radio, right? The Lithias, the Adroits, the Asantes in the community. But it allowed me to sort of get out there and see which companies' cultures did I fit in with, right? Where did I, even if it's just as an admin, as a clerk, as an exec assistant, somewhere in HR, where did I like the way that they treated people? And where did it feel good to go into work every day? And for me, that was a great way to do a trial and error, because sometimes we accept a job and then we get there and we say, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be at all. And then you're thinking, how the heck do I get out of here? And fast. And then you say, I can't, I just started. Right? And so for me, that was something that worked. And I ended up working at a company where through a series of these transferable skills, right? So another one was project management, okay? It doesn't matter what industry you work in. Can you manage a project? Because if you can, I need you. And there are probably a whole bunch of people in this room that also need you. I need you to be able to manage it from start to finish. I want you to start at the end game, and I want you to get me there. Let's back into everything that's going to be necessary to get there. And if you can do that, and you can do it successfully, and you can also assemble a team and help those folks do it too, keep everyone on track, that is a skill that anyone would love to have in their company. Is there anyone that would not find that useful? I wouldn't think so. And so as part of that, I worked on a project management team where I managed the business integration of a major publicly traded company that had bought another publicly traded company. And I just got to say, I did a great job. I did a bang-up job on that project, and a position there was created for me to work on a mergers and acquisitions team where I helped to manage about 13 mergers or divestitures. And then another position was created where I became the corporate communications manager for a publicly traded company, doing something I had never done before, right? This was something where I had compliance with the SEC, right? You know, we had quarterly earnings releases. I worked on an investor relations team. There was a internal relations, external relations, public relations, community relations, but all of this was now mine, and it was a position that had never existed before. But it was bringing all of these transferable skills every single time, letting them build, and being outstanding at my job. And that is something that I always say I have a 17-year-old daughter. She's really my niece, the sister who died. I am now her guardian. Yeah, thank you. But one of the things I tell her often is, you must be outstanding at what you do. It's great for people to give you an opportunity. It's great for people to talk over what is your next move, what's the next thing you want to do, how do you position yourself for that. But if you don't have the chops, you're out of there, right? And so that was another part of it, was do a great job. From that point, in St. Louis, we had a baby. So now I've also got a 3.5-year-old at home. So I've got a 17 and I acquired them within about 3 weeks of each other. Well, one of them I had, right? The other one I acquired through a very long court process. But it was really tough because when we talk about barriers, right? When we talk about what makes the next step unclear, it's not necessarily a challenge, but it is a life change. It's something that I wanted. It's something that they wanted. We all wanted. We assembled our team, but it happened, and it was tough. Going through from no kids to 2 kids in a 3-week time span was not easy. And I say it's getting 2 kids at the most difficult points in their lives, right? Anyone want a 14-year-old girl? For the first time, 14 years old, that's tough. But whatever the case, we then moved to, and now I'm going to rock your world. We then moved to New York City, okay? One of the most expensive cities on the planet, certainly one of the most expensive in this country. But I was the breadwinner in my family. This whole time, my husband's on his medical school journey, residency, fellowship, and on. So I'm holding it down, right? We moved to New York City about 2 weeks after we had the 2 kids, and we're going crazy. The kid has, and this is something else I'm sure some of you have dealt with. I had a very sickly baby, and so trying to keep adequate health care, and, we've got job changes. We're technically homeless for the summer, waiting for, not in the homeless shelter, but just waiting for our apartment in New York to get ready, right? As soon as we got there, at 6 weeks and 1 day, I was laid off on maternity leave. And I was the breadwinner. And I thought, what the heck am I going to do? Because my husband doesn't make any money. And that was really tough. I know some of you will say, isn't that illegal? And I'll tell you this. Yes, it's illegal if you're on maternity leave. But once you get past, at the time, my employer was Missouri, and once you get past that 6 weeks and it turns over into FMLA time, it's not anymore. Then you're just on disability. 6 weeks and 1 day. I didn't take offense because 200 other people got laid off. And after that, there were another 400, right? But it happens. And so we talk about the barriers. We talk about starting out on common ground. We have all been there. And when I talk to you about all of these things, please know I speak to you from a place of experience. So from New York to here, that was pretty easy. So there's nothing devastating happening in this point in time. But going on, so now that, we've all established, tough stuff happens, right? It has happened to all of us. We've had career setbacks and so on. But where do you figure out when you're in that reinvention process, when you're in that transition process? Or maybe it's, I love what I'm doing, but I need some growth. Right now I've been in the same position for about 7 or 8 years. Nothing's really changing, and I'm just sort of bored. Whatever it may be, figure out where you're going. Next we'll talk about how you get there and then what. So the first thing is figure out what you want. And I can't figure that out for you, right? But again, I'll tell you what I tell my 17-year-old. We're going through this process right now of trying to figure out how it is that she'll pick a major. She's saying, I don't know what I want to do. I said, welcome to the club. But, so I go through like this sort of a rubric with her where I say, well, do you want a creative job? Or do you want something where things are really well kind of mapped out for you already? And she's like, maybe a mixture of both. Okay, great. That's a start. So do you think you want to work inside or outside? She's like, I would hate to be tied to a desk. Great. That tells us another set of jobs you probably won't be doing. Do you want to work with people or do you want to work with numbers? Do you want to work with artifacts? What sort of work do you want to do? One of the things she knows about herself is she's an introvert. She's like, I do not want to work with people. Awesome. Because that tells me a whole host of other things that we won't be doing, and that, avenues we won't be looking down. So I think she's sort of in the area of landscape architecture, which sort of is like the silver bullet down the middle, maybe environmental studies or something like this. But part of it is, you have to figure out what your rubric is for that decision-making sort of matrix, and just figure out what you want. And then what does it mean to achieve within that framework? For me, in my current role, remember I was here for about 2 years before I ever got a job. And for me, figuring out what I wanted, because I, like Wendy, I'm a perpetual unsure about what I want to do when I grow up, but I can't just sit here. For me, what I wanted was I had to get up and go to work every day, because I got to a point where my achievements were no longer my own. The best thing that could happen to me in a day is if my toddler said a new word, or if my 16-year-old at the time brought home an A on a paper. But I looked around and I said, those aren't my accomplishments. Those are theirs, and I'm sort of co-opting them because I have none of my own. And while being a great parent helps lead to some of those successes, they were not mine. And so me figuring that out was, I need to get up and go to work every day, have achievements of my own, and in my own personal rubric, I wanted to have something I could point to that says, I did that, I built that. Some people don't need that. But I do need that to have something tangible to point to. And what does it mean to achieve in that framework? For me, achievement meant I could have day-to-day wins. Getting up and actually putting on a suit every day, that's achievement to me, because before I was in yoga pants all day, right? And so achievement was doing something. I'm figuring out the pieces of the puzzle. If I could do something where I could be creative and constructive, and my mind works in such that I'm a tinkerer. Right? And as a tinkerer, I need to always be figuring out a challenge. And so achievement is if I can be figuring out how to solve these puzzles every day. And how do I measure success? Some people, anyone measure success in dollars? Some people do. You got to pay me, right? I'm sure I got to pay some of you too. But for other people, success is very different, right? And so what is going to be your measure of success? So these are just a few goals, right, that some people in this room may have right now. Get a pay increase. Anybody in here want a raise? I know I do. Get a new job. Get a promotion, perhaps. Add to my skill set and my expertise. Perhaps help others. All of these are things that people in here and people everywhere, they're not unreasonable goals to want to achieve, right? But I look at this list and I say, in my paradigm, this list has to be inverted. I have to start with helping others, right? I truly believe that you get out what you put in. And it's going to be hard to accomplish much of anything without the help of others, without someone being kind to you. I've been very fortunate in my life because of the kindness of others. Also my own accomplishments, but the kindness of others. And I can't expect people to help me if I'm not willing to help others. And whether that means volunteering, whether that means serving on community boards, whether that means in your just day-to-day life, giving people a hand up, whatever that may be, you will get out what you put in. But if you put in nothing, you probably won't get out a whole lot either. Next is adding to the skill set, right? Position yourself for that next move. So that when you are the most knowledgeable person, when you can do something better than everyone else, it makes sense why you'd have that promotion. It makes sense that when you go to get that new job, whatever it may be, that you're the one that gets picked. And certainly, all of those things would position you well to make more money. The next thing you want to figure out is, where are we going to go? Is there a roadmap? Is there any, do we have any attorneys in the house? Oh, wonderful. We sure do, don't we? Okay, so can you talk to me a little bit about what is the roadmap, right, for becoming an attorney?
Well, it's pretty fortunate because at least you know what the road is, even if you know it's a really hard climb.
Sure.
Everybody has to do the same thing. You got to go to college. You got to go to law school. You got to pass the bar. You got to get a job. And then, after that, the field is wide open.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to share with you another story. Sometimes it's not as easy. What if someone can't get into law school? What if they bomb the LSAT, right? Are there other options? The other thing I think we all need to do is figure out, is there more than one way to get there, right? And I'll tell you a story about someone who I worked with as my general counsel in the past, and he never went to law school, and he's an attorney today. But there are a few states in this country where you don't actually have to go to law school. All you have to do is pass the bar. Now, there's a little bit of a different procedure in that you become a reader of the law, right? And you can do an apprenticeship under someone for, I think it's about 5 years, and you would do it that way. Well, he couldn't get into law school. He bombed the LSAT, 4 or 5 times, and this was probably in the, 70s or 80s that this happened. And so he went and got a Master of Laws degree. So he learned the law, right? But he did it in a very different way. And he was still able to, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? So if one door gets closed to you, figure out, is there something else you can do? Will there be a detour? Absolutely. We've already talked about, you can get into that role and just hate it. That's sort of a detour. But figure out what's prolonging your journey, right? Is it just the fact that perhaps you have kids and you realize that you can't get a new job, you can't take on additional responsibilities, you can't even pursue a hobby or a creative endeavor that might sort of be rewarding or fulfilling for you because you have a 3.5-year-old at home and bedtime is at 6, bedtime is at 7, and so you can't be in a class at that time because you have to be doing family things. Well, whatever it is that's prolonging the journey, deal with that, right? Don't just say, I can't, I can't, I can't. This is another thing that I've had said to me, and I say it to others. If you give me 1,000 reasons why you can, I just need to hear one how you can. And dealing with whatever that barrier is can open a lot of doors for you. And in this case, let's say it's the schedule, right? You may have to go a little further away from home. You may have to take half of your classes online, but you can go to a university and get a degree on a Saturday, on a Friday, on a Sunday, online instead. It doesn't have to be in the classroom every single day. So figure out not the reasons why you can't, but the reasons why you can. And then when you hit a roadblock, do you have a plan on how to handle that? Right? So if you know, again, that this kid is the thing that sort of is tugging at you, saying, the kid could get sick, and then what am I going to do? You have a team, right? You've already assembled that, right? So check in with your team to say, okay, guys, I'm going back to school. I have to do this. It's going to take me about 2 years. And along the way, if my son gets sick, along the way, if the babysitter cancels, are you someone who I can call just to help me out, to get me over the line? For us, our plan, my roadblock was getting that layoff, right? Having 2 kids, living in the most expensive city in the country, and having no job. But I always plan. And so I had lived well below my means for so long that when it happened, I almost didn't feel it because I was prepared. You know how to scale back when you have to, and you already have a plan. But when you have, perhaps a soft place to land, a little bit of a cushion, it can help ease the burden. So when you hit that roadblock, most of those things are pretty predictable sometimes. And so if you can plan for that, it's easier to handle when the time comes along. So now let's talk about how it is that we're going to get there. And this is where some of those even more tangible steps will come in. So my question for you is your light on? And I'll tell you a story about that that's very special to me. But my sister who died, when we were teenagers in high school, she was very popular. All the boys liked her. She was president of everything on all the student leadership councils. She was friends with the cheerleaders, the drama club. She played sports, all of this stuff. And I was sort of like her fat little sister with the nappy bangs. So true, so true. And she was beautiful and all these other things. And I would say to her, "No, how come nobody likes me?" And she always placed so much value on me. I thought, I must be worthy, but how come nobody likes me? And she said, "Well, baby, your light isn't on." And that is something, when I tell you, we'll come back to this, and it really does influence so much of what I do today. And it's what I look for in others, too. I look for people whose lights are on, and whether that's in a friend, whether that's in an employee, everywhere I go, even into the grocery store, the people you choose to say hello to, the people you choose to bring into your network, is their light on, right? Are they ready? Are they open? Are they receptive? And are you that way? Anyone ever walk into a party? I think Melissa talked about this today. The dessert, she says, "Oh, I'm just going to go home instead." This morning in the keynote. Anyone else in here ever have that experience? You walk into a party and you're like, "Oh, I don't want to be here." I've done it many times. But part of that is, and I'll say this to my niece/daughter, how do you expect anyone to come talk to you when you're in the corner like this? Or you have a scowl on your face, or you don't have a smile? Turn the light on, right? People say, "Oh, I've been single for 6 years now." Well, your light's not on, right? Not the kind in Amsterdam. But a little bit different. But turning your light on, the biggest and most important thing about that, I'll probably say that's on here, is be authentic, right? I think any of us can smell a phony a mile away. And even when someone has a difficult personality, do any of you ever, you find yourself remarking to your friend, if she would just be herself, nobody would care, right? Be authentic. People can sniff a phony and they don't like it. They'd rather have you in all your splendor or all your horror, as long as it's authentic, right? But smile, be brilliant. This is going back to that thing, be outstanding at what you do. It's hard to deny that. Be bold, be interested in other people, have an open mind, go out there and go get it. But, and part of this is having courage, right? Because it's not easy to do any of these things sometimes. So step one, how are we going to get there? Let's create the plan, right? We've already identified some of those goals already. We sort of know where we want to be. We sort of know what we're interested in. But let's say that thing is to get the pay increase, right? We don't have to go through all of these, but I'll tell you another. I've got so many stories, you guys. But I was talking to a young man at work just the other day, and he was talking about the fact that he's severely underpaid and was going to quit his job, but he didn't want to, but he felt like there's just no room for growth. And I said, wait a minute, you don't have to quit. Just ask for more money. And he says, oh, well, I'm not sure if I can do that. And I said, revisit your job description. Your job has markedly changed since the time you started it. That ever happened to anyone in here? Yeah? And so you revisit that job description, and then you look at the areas where you are just above and beyond the scope, right? I'm performing so far outside of what I was hired to do, but they're not paying me anymore for it. I'm working all these extra hours. I'm taking all this new responsibility. I even have people reporting to me, and they don't give me a dime, right? This individual also had acquired a master's degree from the time that he had been hired to when we had this conversation just last week, and that wasn't being compensated either, right? And so I said to him, look at all these things. Look at all this growth that you've had. Sort of get that down onto a chart, onto a list, record that, document it. And one of the things I do is I have in my desk drawer, it's called a Yay Me folder. And every time I finish a big project and someone sends me a congratulatory note or says you did a great job with this, that, or the other thing, I print out that email and I stick it in the Yay Me folder. Because then when it comes time to do my annual review, I don't have to sit there, because we discount ourselves sometimes, right? I don't have to sit there and say, gee, well, what did I do this year? Oh, I just pull out the Yay Me file and I say, oh, I'm going to tell you what I did. And you're going to give me some money, right? And then and know going into that, for example, on the pay increase, know what you want out of it, right? If you're making, I don't know, we've got some young career professionals in here. Perhaps you're making $15 an hour, right? And you go in saying, I want to raise, and you've proven all this stuff, and you walk out at $15.50. That's not a big win, right? But if you go in knowing and you say, I want $18 an hour, I need double what you're paying me, or somewhere in the middle, 23 maybe. That's a big win, right? And then figure out who to ask and when and what the right timing is, right? You don't want to do it like after earnings just got reported and things are really bad, right? Probably right after you had a great big win, right after you've been instrumental on a project, right? Something that project would not have gone well without you. That's the time that you come in and say, here, let's talk about this, right after they congratulate you for doing such a great job. Perhaps your plan might be to just find something that's personally rewarding for you. Go ahead and do that. Understand what you need to feel rewarded, though. Is it money? Do you need someone always patting you on the back saying attaboy or attagirl? Figure out what you need to feel rewarded. For me, it's helping people, right? But then your specific interests, who do you want to help? Old people, young people, babies? Do you want to work in education, the homeless? I want to help people. Let's say I need money to feel rewarded. And my specific interests are helping people maybe financially, because I want to be close to their money. And I want to figure out how to make it myself. And there's no better way to do that than to get close to it. But figure out what the interests are and then what opportunities are available to you. You don't have to know exactly what you want to do to say, there is opportunity in this area, and I have some transferable skills that I can bring to the table to sort of win in this area. We won't go through all of these, but I'll end with the take the next step, right? So it's not just do all this work, do all this stuff in the background, right? But do all the work and then take the leap, right? Because that's where we often will fall short. The next thing, I think, is helping yourself. So you figured out what to do, right? You've created the plan. Now how do you help yourself get there? Start with the end in mind. Figure out what you're trying to accomplish for the long game, and how do you back into that, right? It's like people plan events, they plan weddings, they say it's going to be on this date. What are all the things that you need to do to back into that project, right? Well, 6 weeks out, we need to do this. 2 months out, we need to do this. And then you sort of, instead of starting at the top, I think we heard a young woman earlier in one of Melissa's sessions, if any of you were there also, who said, sometimes it's just so hard to get started, right? It's so hard I'm a perfectionist, I don't even know how to start. Well, don't start at the top. Start at the bottom. Start at the end and work your way into it. And that'll tell you sort of what all the steps are. And sometimes it's a lot easier. Another one I think is really important is keeping the network open, right? You have all these wonderful people you've met today. What are you going to do with all of this, right? Send an email. It was a pleasure to meet you at the Women's Leadership Conference. I remember I sat next to you in the 2:15 session. I love the story that you told me about the barriers you had, and I love to hear how you overcame it. I just want you to know that you were really inspirational to me, and I hope that you'd be open to a relationship, in the future. Let's say you're on to the next job. You've got an old boss. How do you keep the network open? You say, I don't know if it's appropriate to contact. When you leave, just say, do you mind if I keep in touch with you over the years? When you send out your Christmas newsletter or whatever it is once a year, just send them a copy. Or it's their birthday and say, I remember doing something with you around this time of year when we worked together. I just wanted to send a note to say, happy birthday, or thanks, or I know that you're interested in X, Y, or Z thing. I read this article. It's fantastic. Here you go. Keep the network open. That way, when you need to tap into it, it's always ready. All you're doing is knocking on the door. You don't have to sort of bam on it, and hope someone opens. And the most important thing, I think, in helping yourself is start now. Don't wait until you're in a time of transition. Don't wait until you are in a time of desperation. If you start now, it's like if you stay ready, you won't have to get ready. Isn't that what they say? But that's sort of the idea behind this. And then analyze yourself, right? When I'm in an interview and I'm trying to hire someone, the most important question for me, or one of the most, I ask, what is the thing that you are really, really good at? What are you better at than anybody else? What is the thing I need to know about you that you do really, really well? And it doesn't necessarily have to be anything with accounting, if that's what part of the job would require. But I need to know what your natural talents are. And you probably should know those too. And if you haven't given that any thought, that'll be a tough question to answer, because then what you say is, and I've heard this a lot, I don't know. Well, I'm not interested in you. If you don't know, why should someone else have that interest either, right? So know what those things are, and know what the things that you aren't good at, so that when you sit down in that interview or when you ask for that next thing, you can say, these are the things I'm really good at, these are the things I enjoy, and I'll tell you where perhaps I have some opportunities, but I'm willing to learn, and if you'll teach me, I'm a fast learner. But I'll tell you now, if you want me to count beans, that's not what I do. All right. So the other thing is, what are you not willing to do? Know that going in, so that I said for the current job I'm in, I said in my interview, I'm not interested in something that's strictly administrative. Like, I would like to do something with high visibility where I can have accomplishments and so on and so forth. But if you're not willing to sit there and sort of push paper, know that about yourself going in, because if that's what the job is, or if that's what the opportunity is, run the other way as soon as you can. And then again, these transferable skills, okay? What are some of the other transferable skills? For those of you who are here, who are responsible for hiring people, for building teams, what are some of the skills besides communication that you might look for that you would consider transferable? Yeah.
A lot of that has to do with the fit of the culture.
Oh, okay.
So I look for those same features I'm going to add to the
Okay, and what's your name?
Alana.
Alana. Okay, Alana. So what she was saying is like cultural fit, right? An ability to sort of become part of a culture, or to fit into the culture of a corporation. Anybody else? What else are some of the transferable things that you find valuable? Patty? Supervisory. Any supervisors in the room? Who can say that it's the people management part that can be the most difficult part of the job sometime, right? That's a great one, Patty. Thank you. Any others that you all can think of? Yeah, we've got one back here. I can't hear. That's a great one. Being able to resolve problems, being a problem solver. But these are some of the things when you think about what are transferable skills. If I know that my next leap, or that I'm thinking about taking a leap that is into an area that I'm not so sure about, or I've never dealt with before, take down this inventory. These are some of the skills that if you can work on those, even if you've never worked in that industry, what you can put on your cover letter is, although I've never worked in manufacturing, I have these transferable skills of, I'm a great problem solver. I've been an excellent supervisor, as evidenced by X, Y, and Z things. Those are things that get the attention of people. Yeah, please.
When you're trying to do a transition,
Sure.
somebody suggested to me that I take my resume and make it a functional resume.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're saying about the transferable skills,
Sure.
put that at the top as opposed to just doing job titles. What is your feeling about that?
So I probably do more than is necessary. So, and I've been in that position. And what I do is I put in my cover letter the transferable stuff, right? Because that is the thing that'll set you apart. They're going to look at your resume, and most of you know this, when 20 of them come in, you look at it in about 30 seconds. You know if you want that person. And so on that resume, what I've got to hit is what are the required qualifications. So I make sure that those stand out. But the things about me as a person, what sets me apart personally from the next applicant, those are the things that I put in a cover letter because I feel like that's a conversation, or it starts a conversation, and at least it did for me in the ways that I've done this in the past. And then depending on what I'm doing, because I change industries, I change economies, interests, pretty much with every move, I end up changing my resume for almost I have a education resume, I have a nonprofit resume. I sort of change it around for each one so that I am meeting the need and not trying to use a blanket to cover something. So is that helpful at all? Or I hope so. Thank you. So the point being here is I feel like, at least for me, and I've seen this for others, I've seen this for people that I've hired, people that I've given opportunities to, transferable skills are the gateway, right? If, with all other things being equal, the thing that sets you apart might be those transferable skills. So, last thing, get help. What can others do to help you? We've talked about what you can do to help yourself. What can others do to help you? Find a mentor. As soon as I start working somewhere, usually within my first month, I identify a mentor. Sometimes he or she doesn't even know they're my mentor. It's true. One of the things I think Melissa had answered this question earlier is, what do you look for in a mentor? And I agree wholeheartedly with what she said, which is it really has to be specific to you, right? I may have 2 or 3 different mentors at a time, and that's okay. But sometimes I need one because I'm new to a place. I'm new to Southern Oregon, or at least at the time I started my job I was. New to Southern Oregon. I'm new to the company, and I need a mentor who obviously knows how to navigate things, who looks like they have a command of the culture. That is someone who, when I talk about the behavior I want to emulate in that place, I need that sort of mentor. Other times, I need a mentor so that I can get better at what I do. I need someone who will give me a kick in the pants, who's already further down the road in the path that I'm going. And so I'll find a mentor in that area as well. The point is, there are people who've done this before, and they're probably smarter than you at what you're doing. And there isn't any reason why you shouldn't take advantage of that. And you can have a mentor who is younger than you. I do want to point that out. Tap into your network, assemble your team. We've talked about all of these things, but the most important thing is the follow-through, right? When you have other people helping you, if you've told them you're going to do something, do it. If you want people to invest the time in you, one thing for them, you must do it. Because you'll ask them to give you a recommendation, you'll ask them to give you a lead, you'll ask them to share some information, and they won't be able to do it with confidence because they say, this person's flaky. This person said they'd do something and they never did it. Even if it was as simple as send an email, what they can figure is if they let you into their network, they make something available to you, that you won't follow through with them either. And no one wants to put themselves on the line like that. Last thing, this is probably pretty self-explanatory, but get connected. Some people are, some people aren't. It's something as simple as changing your status, right? If you're on LinkedIn and you put in something like open to new opportunities for your new status, people will respond. People will say to you, looks like we're just about out of time. People will respond to you, and what they'll say is, tell me what sort of opportunities you're looking for. You can say, I don't know. I'm just looking for something creative right now. I'm looking for something new. And people are willing to help you. So learn from the mistakes of others, right? But this is also learn from the experience of others also. People have stuff to share, okay? Tap into that. So the last thing is, and this is right where we'll close it out, then what? You figure out, going this way is the right way. That's cool. But what if it's the wrong way? This guy looks really sad, by the way. So what? Start over. Start the process again. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You lose out on a few bucks, whatever. But what you won't do is have regrets about what you didn't do or perhaps having done something wrong. And again, I wish you guys could see this. This is animated, and it was fantastic. But this little guy dances around, and he's trying to get on the target. And part of it is so many of us have been like so close. The target's right here. Oh, we almost had it. It's right here. But you can't almost be on target, right? If you want these opportunities, you must hit that target every single time and be outstanding, have the chops. And if you can do all of these things, then chances are you'll be able to reinvent yourself. Chances are you'll be able to make that transition and do all the things that you need to do pretty easily because you're really well prepared. So just a few key takeaways there. Be ready, set your goals, make your plans, use your network, improve, be outstanding. Okay. Thank you all very much.